Today on Locked On Rockies, navigating this offseason, is it the right moves? Are they the wrong moves? What's going to happen with the Rockies in 2023? Patrick Lyons of DNVR Rockies joins us to break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, you're in luck, because that's what we do around here, is talk about the Colorado Rockies each and every day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We can be found on your favorite streaming service, and every episode is recorded live on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, like we are right now. And I don't want to waste any more time, because we got a great guest, friend of the show. Patrick Lyons joins us once again. We talked a little bit, I think, during the season, and Patrick follows the team. He works with DNVR Rockies, all sorts of stuff. And this is the fourth podcast of the day. So also running the Iron Man gauntlet today. So Patrick, thank you so much for your time. And for the folks that missed you the first time, why don't you just give the brief introduction? Tell us a little bit about you and your work.
Yeah, DNVR Rockies podcast, 5 days a week, just like you, Paul. I mean, we're all grinding out here, doing the podcast thing. DNVR Sports Channel, of course, is where you could watch us as well over on YouTube, where we're co-host Susie Hunter. We have a lot of fun, kind of making fun of the Rockies, laughing with them, laughing at them, and celebrating the players that we love and we all want to support. At DNVR_Rockies, at Patrick D. Lyons is where I'm at on Twitter, and a lot of good written content over at the DNVR.com, much of which is free now. We've got to try to kind of change our platform just a little bit now, so you can read pretty much just about everything that we put out content-wise.
Awesome. Great to hear it. I mean, that's it's one. I did an episode actually of how important it is to support people that cover the Rockies, because there's a lot of great people that cover the Rockies. And if you want good Rockies info, you got to support these people, whether it's following, it's listening, it's the small stuff up to, obviously taking your time with your finances to help out. But let's just kind of talk a little bit about the vibes of the Rockies right now. You kind of have to laugh a little bit if you're a Rockies fan. Sometimes it's really how you get through this. I mean, last season, and let's just speak bluntly here. Last season kind of sucked. I mean, there wasn't anything to be the big thing to be excited for didn't pan out. The team still, the direction, all of that. But I tell you, Patrick, towards the end was when I started enjoying watching the Rockies again, because they let the prospects play. And now I can actually sit here and, yes, I'm upset at the lack of the moves by the Rockies, and we'll get to that here in a second. But now I'm saying, you know what? If this is the year the Rockies turn to their big four prospects from the end of last year, Montero, Tolia, out of nowhere, Sean Bouchard, and Tovar, I'm okay with that, because they're not going to take down a really mad Padres team, San Francisco team that who knows what they'll do. I mean, obviously they lose Correa, and of course the juggernaut of the Dodgers. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts so far into the offseason for the Rockies?
It's been a very, very quiet off season, and to your point, it felt like pretty much like mid-June, late June, when Chris Bryant went back on the IL, and it seemed like it was at that point we didn't realize that it was going to be this never-ending saga throughout the entire season, and we wouldn't see him again. But even by the end of June, which really is the start of summer, the team just lacked all intrigue whatsoever, and it was immediately about looking down in the minors and saying, "Hey, Ezekiel Tovar is looking really good down there in Double-A Hartford. When are we going to get him? When are we going to get some of that juice into the ballpark?" Because there wasn't much to play for. There weren't a ton of great storylines. I mean, everyone was clamoring around Whitton Bernard, not just because of his great story, but also because of his MVP caliber season down in AAA with the Isotopes. So there wasn't much going on until, to your point, that September run, that 1 week in October, even though they're playing the Dodgers for 6 games of like, okay, you better be ready for what the big leagues has to offer, and you're going to be playing a lot of games against the Dodgers. Let's see what you got. We got that home run out of Ezekiel Tovar for his first one against Clayton Kershaw, which was exciting. And we've had to do a lot of waiting since then. I think the moves that they've made this offseason have been shrewd, and I say that in a complimentary way. Brent Suter was a great pickup. Still not sure why the Milwaukee Brewers waived him. That's still kind of inexplicable, right?
Mm-hmm. He was beloved in Milwaukee. I mean, and then you look at the numbers. There's nothing there that it reminds me, and this is where props is due. It's like Denilson Lamet. It's like, yeah, go get that guy, and bringing him back. Yeah, 1 year slam dunk. Love it. I completely agree.
Yeah, the Nolan Jones trade, I think, could not gonna say is going to be or could be a stroke of genius, but could be one of those low key moves where Juan Brito. I asked GM Bill Schmidt, was Juan Brito making your 40 man? The fact that he traded him was all the answer you need, but he did confirm that he wasn't going to be on the 40 man. So maybe the Guardians were basically saying, look, we're going to take him in the Rule 5 draft, so you might as well get something. Got Nolan Jones, aka Nojo. I don't know if this nickname is gonna stick, but we lost Kojo, so now we've got Nojo. Why not play a little third base, a little bit of right field? Maybe he's that left-handed outfield bat they've kind of been clamoring for all offseason. He should get some opportunities, but that's really been it. It's been really quiet, and they add a bunch of guys to the 40-man roster, and a bunch of minor league signings. I think we could get a couple more of those. Today's DNVR Rockies podcast, that another left-handed hitting outfielder. There are a couple horizontal moves. Jackie Bradley Jr. is probably my favorite one. And again, he doesn't even need to necessarily play every day, but you put him out there in center field, he's going to track the ball down. He's going to be really solid defensively. Maybe you go out and get another starting pitcher as insurance because you're not crazy about the depth of the rotation. And you go and possibly find another left-handed reliever. Right now it's Suter, as we mentioned. Lucas Gilbreth, who appears to be healthy going into this season. I've been kind of saying a lot. I think Ryan Rawlston's a very good candidate to go to the bullpen, considering that his innings have really been limited since 2019, right? Missed all of the minor league season in 2020, and injuries really has kind of curtailed his 21 and 22. So that could give you 3 really good lefties, but if you need some more insurance, I think you can go that route to help bolster the bullpen as well.
My biggest disappointment in the Rockies offseason, because again, I knew they're not going to make a Chris Bryant level move, especially not with the way the market was reacting to these players. And maybe one thing, it just kind of reminds you, it's just like, holy smokes, I can't believe Nolan Arenado didn't opt out and get a whole bunch of money. That's a completely different. I mean, even the Cardinals, going back to the Cardinals and getting that money from them, but that's a different point. I don't think the Rockies were ever poised to do this. But I tell you, the Rockies should have gotten Cody Bellinger or Joey Gallo. I really think that either one of those 1 year, because if it doesn't work out, fine. Guess what? They don't play. It's 1 year. Jonathan Daza is a perfectly good piece. You've moved. You have Randall Grichuk still, and where are you going to put these prospects? You got to put those prospects somewhere. And I think missing out on the Bellinger rebound project, and even the Joey Gallo, because I think Joey Gallo, the no shift and everything is really going to be beneficial to him. I think missing out on those two was the mistake for the Rockies. And I mean, I think that that was a way the team could have gotten better. I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, Gallo didn't seem to be a player that they were really kicking the tires on, and you're right. I think he would have been an interesting fit to say the least. No such thing as a bad 1 year deal, which both of those guys did get. Bellinger, I think, has an interesting little option for next year as well. It's a mutual option for 2024. But Bellinger, they were in on. Schmidt and the Rockies did talk with his agent Scott Boras. I never thought that Bellinger would come here. He's perfect fit, as you said. He would have been a great candidate for the Rockies. But for Bellinger and Scott Boras, coming to Colorado was the last thing he should be doing for multiple reasons. He wanted a 1 year deal so that he could go out on the market when he was supposed to as a free agent and make as much money as possible. And you come to Colorado, there's two big reasons why he probably wouldn't have gotten as large of a deal as he would have liked. One being if you don't trade if you don't trade Cody Bellinger, that means the Rockies could have then given him a qualifying offer, and now teams, when they negotiate with him, would have used that as leverage and say, well, we can't really give you that much because we're going to be losing a draft pick. And so that's something that certainly would have hurt his value. And you can't rely on the Rockies to make a trade at the deadline. Whereas the Cubs, don't know. They could have a handshake agreement saying, if we're so many games, behind the third and final wild card, then okay, well, we'll go ahead and trade you, whatever that deal is. They're also smart enough to know that, they're not necessarily contenders now. Their farm system has improved greatly. So they're going to be better in the next couple of years. Go ahead and improve that farm system even further by trading him. The other piece, too, that I think all players in Colorado have to deal with is the Coors Field splits. Now, we all know about it. We all understand it. But teams can negotiate with agents and I'm not going to say play ignorant, but say, we've got our concerns. We've really got our concerns about how well things have been going. And again, that's going to hurt Bellinger in the negotiating room. So I think those are two big reasons why, Colorado might not be that best possible fit. Go somewhere else. I can have my cake and eat it too, where people aren't going to be asking about the home road splits. And I could possibly get traded to a contender, win a championship, play really well in the postseason. Again, he's betting on himself to do that. And that's going to be worth more to him in free agency, especially when he gets traded, or if he gets traded. There's no qualifying offer to tamp down his market.
And not to mention, you're playing for the Cubs. I mean, there's a whole different wave of eyes on you. You're going to be in the national focus more than if you're the Rockies, and Bellinger's. I think, again, that's a perfect way to put it. I was just hoping that it was like, if you're the Rockies, just pay him $2 million extra more dollars. Like, I mean, you were top 10 and you have the money. I that's we'll dive in. I'm curious. We mentioned the improved farm system. And I'm calling the core four, and I want to know who your favorite of the prospects for the Rockies are for this season. But before we do that, got to tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. You can even get out there early on some future bets. I don't have it in front of me, Patrick, but I'm sitting Rockies win totals 72. That's kind of where I'm sitting at. I don't know if you would take the over or under around there. That's me feeling confident, but that's what I'm thinking of. And you can see all the future bets, all the good stuff going on at betonline.net. They got more sports podcasts. If you're done listening to Locked On Rockies and the DNVR podcasts, you can go check them out at BetOnline. BetOnline's got the mobile device. You can go there on your phone. You can go also check out betonline.net on the website. Head to betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are joined by Patrick Lyons of DNVR Rockies, covering the team, doing all sorts of great stuff, having a good attitude. I liked how you kicked off that, because sometimes I feel like you have to be a little loosey-goosey, because it's and especially the dog days of baseball, you got to have some fun. And the Rockies are fun. And honestly, turning to young guys, I think you have to embrace that. It was a weird, I had some fans last year. It was kind of, some people were like, I want to watch the Rockies. I don't want to watch the Isotopes. But it's kind of like, you're watching the next Rockies. Like, you're watching like the right in between. It's so important for these prospects to get on the field, but there's interesting paths for these players to get there. And my favorite of the core four, Elehuris Montero, he's the one I love Tovar and I'm excited to see, but Montero and his power, what he brings is something I'm really interested to watch, but I'm worried about how he's going to get on the field. So I'm curious, tell me what your thoughts are about the big four prospects, what your expectations are, and how are they going to see the field?
Yeah, that's a great point. There is somewhat of a logjam in the infield as a whole. Tovar, okay, he's the shortstop, and if he's not ready, by opening day, or that groin injury is something that maybe gets re-aggravated, whatever it is, you can go to Alan Trejo. But between first, second, and third base, you're right. Where's their playing time? You've got Crone and Tolia over there at first base. Brendan Rodgers is obviously the incumbent Gold Glove second baseman, but Ryan McMahon can play over there as well. And then at third base, it's McMahon, Elehuris Montero, and maybe throw Nolan Jones there as well. He, of course, had to move off that position when he was with Cleveland's organization, because they had a pretty good one there in Jose Ramirez. So, that's a lot of guys. Where's that playing time going to come in? Bud Black did say last month that, ultimately these young guys, that core four that you talk about, they've got nothing else really to learn down in the minor league. So they are going to be a part of the big league roster. That's also it also means that they're going to be, part of the big league roster bench. Like they're going to have to figure that element out, that aspect of coming in the games late. Could be a lot of those double switches, if you will, and not playing full games. But he's going to try to spread out, the at bats, I think, as much as possible. It's not going to be anyone that's going to be starting, 6 days a week with a day off on Sunday. It could be a little bit of platooning, but I don't know how much that necessarily benefits those young guys, because if you're a right-handed hitter, you need to hit against those righties, and if you're coming from the left-hand side, like Nolan Jones is doing, against a lefty, like you've got to be able to face those lefties and figure that out. Those are part of the growing pain. So I don't know what that path is to playing time. It could just sort itself out in general, if you don't want anyone to get injured, but we know guys, to have sabbaticals on the IL from time to time. And if you believe the conversation over the weekend that broke from John Heyman, maybe that logjam gets cleared up a little bit, as you talked about this week. You trade a guy like Brendan Rodgers. Maybe you can acquire an Edward Cabrera from the Marlins, or another really young, controllable pitcher with more than just 3 years of club control, which is what Brendan Rodgers currently has. Then you move Ryan McMahon over second base. Then Montero's got all that playing time that you're looking for this season.
See, let's go there, because here's my thing. I with that news and with the Rockies. One, the Marlins and the Rockies should be talking. There's just absolutely, I don't know why a deal needs. They both have things, but here's my take. I really hope the Rockies don't move from Brendan Rodgers. I understand he's the one that's going to give you the highest return back, but I believe in the upside. What Brendan Rodgers did last season was remarkable, and something that I don't think was really to go from one of the worst players in the entire league to one of the best players in all of the league in at least his position. That's the type of improvement. I am so worried of another year where I sit here and just say, man, Ryan McMahon is good, but he just isn't. He's striking out with runners in scoring position. His numbers aren't horrible. I'm just hoping for more from Ryan McMahon, and I just feel like you can get that from Brendan Rodgers. If for me, if I was running things, I think I'd be more interested in trying, especially if you're not moving McMahon. CJ Cron has to be at the top of the list to move as well. It's the tough part of the business, because great move by the Rockies and what CJ Cron has done, but that back half slide off, and the fact that, again, the logjam of two of your top prospects, because Montero can get a little time at first, maybe over there as well if you keep McMahon. That's a big issue, and I'm really going to be frustrated to watch some of these players not block these younger guys in this season, because this is the type of the season where we got to see these guys. I know Ryan McMahon and CJ Cron are good, and that's kind of the tough spot, but I don't know about these four, and I got to see them.
Yeah, it's somewhat reminiscent of, I want to say, 2018, when you had Gerardo Parra, Carlos Gonzalez in the corners, and everyone's clamoring for David Dahl and Raimel Tapia. And you want those guys to be playing a lot more frequently. And it ended up working out absolutely perfect, as you kind of have to, orchestrate it. You move off of the veteran guys. Not only could you possibly expose those young players more than you would have liked, or maybe before they're even ready, but now you've got nothing to go back on. But if Parra and Cargo get hurt, you've got two really good options. You get rid of them and you're starting Dahl and Tapia in the corners. Who's behind them? Now you're looking at AA guys. Now that replacement level becomes a little bit lower. I think that's some of the thinking in the logjam. Like, hey, it's a good thing it's only for this year, because CJ Cron's a free agent after 2023. So you know what? We'll keep him for now. But to your point, that slide that he had in the second half after he got hit by the pitch on the hand there, I think it was in Arizona. And at that point, teams really started to lowball and really question his value in the second half. And those teams were absolutely right. So I think the command on the trade market for CJ Cron is not very high. He's only making $7.25 million. This year you saw Will Myers get $7.5 million from Cincinnati to play outfield and potentially maybe some first base if Joey Votto is absolutely done. But teams are going other routes at first base. It's almost we're now in a world in which you used to stick a guy who couldn't play the field at DH, and now you want the DH to be a spot where guys can have a day off. So now that DH caliber guy is back over at first base, and so because of that, the demand for a player like CJ Cron is on the lower side. You hope that he can have a really good first half again, stay healthy, and then the Rockies can say, thank you for your service, CJ Cron, but now we're going to free up first base for Montera and Tolia to play a little bit more regularly and improve your farm system at the same time with a trade like that.
Is a combo? Does it have to involve Rogers for the Rockies to get a good arm? The Rockies need a fifth starter, and I wouldn't be surprised if the trade is how they get it done. Especially again when you're looking at a team like the Marlins that has a bunch of pitching. Can a Cron McMahon, a Cron Daza, a Cron Grichuk, any of those deals get anywhere close to what a Brendan Rodgers deal would entail? When I look at the future of the Rockies and if it pans out, I see Rodgers leading that way with this new look infield, and that excites me more. So I'm just curious, can the Rockies send a package without Brendan Rodgers to bring back an impact, whether it be the outfield bat or the fifth arm in the rotation?
I think they can. I really do. I think it's possible for just about any team to come up with a trade like that. You got to get creative. You got to trust in your scouting. You got to trust in your development. I mean, think back to January of 2016. They swung a trade where they had too many outfielders. They wanted to keep Charlie Blackmon. They decided to trade Corey Dickerson. They got back a reliever in Jake McGee from the Tampa Bay Rays. Oh, and ho hum, a guy who had only pitched in Double-A to that point, a young 20-year-old Germán Marquez. Did they do that with their trade with Detroit, giving up Chad Smith and getting Jeff Criswell? I don't know that Jeff Criswell will be a future all-star like Germán Marquez developed into in 2021. But nevertheless, I think you have to be creative in that way. One of the things that I asked Schmidt kind of, point blank after he said, basically didn't want to block any of the young guys. Well, does that mean that they are untradeable? And he said, no, those players are not untradeable. So I don't know who, that young player is that you include in a package deal where you're able to improve that starting pitching or the outfield. I think, the question you ask of can they bring back somebody that's impactful? I think they would want to do it more on the starting pitching side, because again, we just know how hard it is to acquire starting pitching or even develop it. No free agent starting pitcher or free agent reliever of any value wants to come to Colorado unless the Rockies, pay out their butt, which is what we saw with the Super Bullpen. Didn't work out for those guys. Didn't work out for the team either, really, other than that run in 2018. But in the outfield, you also have Zach Veen on his way. There's that left-handed bat. So I think you'd want to try to get a starting pitcher in a deal like that if you got creative. Which we've seen the Rockies do a little bit more. Again, the Juan Brito for Nolan Jones deal was like that. And you also have the Adrian Pinto trade. I probably shouldn't call it the Adrian Pinto trade. It was the Raimel Tapia for Randall Grichuk trade. But they did include a young prospect in that deal for Toronto to pay down a little bit of Grichuk's salary. Pinto having just won the Dominican Summer League batting championship, batting crown, I should say, in 2021. So that they gave up a guy with some upside and can be found on the Blue Jays top 30 prospect list. So if they continue to do more of those things, take those risks, and say, hey, we really value our guys, but at the same time, you got to give a little to get a little. I think they could, turn up a deal like that and really improve the starting rotation for the future.
And I think you're right. I think the best way for the Rockies to help this starting rotation is going to be through the trade. I think that is or you hope you land on another one. I want to bring I want to be hopeful for Jose next year. I think that was out of the two that you were going to bring back for the Rockies, out of the free agents that they added last year, between Jose and Chad Kuhl, it's he was the one to go with. I think Chad Kuhl didn't really kind of lost his cool there. There at the end, where I was pretty impressed with Jose Urena. So I do hope the Rockies. I want to believe in the Rockies getting creative, and they're, like we said, they've been active this offseason. So you have to tamper, because at least the Rockies are active. It's not flashy, but it's, Sam Hilliard, really, what were you? That's the type of move. Why not swap Sam Hilliard, go to a great organization like the Braves, and all for the best. We all love Sam Hilliard, of course, but you can do a little swap. Hopefully that's beneficial. Garrett Hampson can move on. You're not going to be worrying about these type of players. Obviously, it's a heartbreaker. We lost Connor Joe, but that's the same type of thing there too, where everything the Rockies have done this offseason, when you kind of sit there and say it, you kind of feel confident that you can say, well, that kind of makes sense. And to close out the show here, Patrick, I want to more bring it to focus away from just this team, this current year team, to Rockies in general. I want to bring it to a little Helton Hall of Fame talk, and we talked a little bit about this with Bellinger. When is the Coors Field narrative ever going to be? I mean, obviously, we know how it is, and I called some people's analysis of Todd Helton lazy, because I really think when you're like, well, the road splits, and then you look at Todd Helton's road splits, and you're like, those are pretty darn good road splits. Yes, there's a drop off, but that's kind of not my point. When will the Rockies and Rockies players and their legacies stop being punished as much for Coors Field, and players that play at Yankee Stadium, at Great American Ballpark, or pitchers, on the flip side, that play in San Francisco, or these places that are impossible to hit, or Houston, another example? When do those teams and their legacies and their players have to go through the same type of stuff that the Rockies? Because I'm kind of tired of it being an unprecedented thing for Rockies players to have to deal with.
Yeah, I think we have a long way to go until that happens. I'm not going to say never, because we've seen the narrative change a little bit. I can remember even just 3 years ago, like, mind blown, Mad Dog Chris Russo. I have an affinity for him. I really I enjoy him. He's entertaining. He's knowledgeable as all get out. We know that. But he talked about, like, the course he gets. I don't know to what magnitude, but he talked about it. He brought it out there nationally, and it was like, oh, okay. So again, we understand that, and in Colorado, and Rockies fans understand that, and those of us that cover the team, like, we all get it. Paul, you and me, we're all in the same boat. But what about the rest of the country? What about the rest of the world? It's still going to take a while. It's going to be another generation, I think, until we have Hall of Fame voters that can look at guys and not hold that against anyone. I think, a lot of the narrative for Larry Walker and Todd Helton, they played during the PED era. So there's this concept of, well, players benefited from some extraneous circumstances that allowed them to be better than they actually should be. Their numbers were greater than the actual player themselves. And Coors Field is, the physical embodiment of that,
right,
of what a needle is. And so I think, those are kind of the same things. Well, if you're involved in PEDs, that's a little bit, a lot more nefarious. Like, that's a choice you've made. Larry Walker and Todd Helton, they didn't necessarily make a choice, to play at Coors Field and have that held against them in that same capacity. So I think it's going to take a while before we're able to just evaluate guys exactly as they are. Took a while for Larry Walker, but hey, the job got done on the 10th and final ballot. And as we record this, Todd Helton's at 77.5%. We still have a ways to go. That I forget what the number is, but maybe it's like 4 or 5%. You can see fluctuations on the negative side. So that number will come down once some of the private ballots, get counted, because those private ballots are a lot more conservative with their votes. So he might just miss this year. It's still too early to tell. But I mean, even if he's at 65%, I don't know if there's any player who's ever gotten 65% one year and then didn't get in the next year. So it's looking really good for Todd Helton getting in and further changing that narrative. That look at his road numbers. They're better than multiple Hall of Famers that we've seen play in our generation, and we know to be legendary players. And so it's a bit foolish to have that held against them in any capacity.
And I think it's changing in front of our eyes too, because it's not just Hall of Fame. And that's and why I bring it up too is because there's cases to be made against him, but Troy Tulowitzki shouldn't be considered a great player because he was in Colorado. His case for Hall of Fame should be more of the injuries and the lack of playing time. He shouldn't be dinged because he was great in Colorado. Same with Matt Holliday. Are you going to deny a huge chunk of Matt Holliday's career because he played in Colorado? Are you only going to focus on that? And maybe I'm curious, Patrick, if that trade happens and say Todd Helton performs, the numbers are the same and it's the same thing, and maybe instead he's a World Series champion instead of losing in the World Series with the Boston Red Sox. Is he in already?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think
Right?
so. We wouldn't have that narrative. I think maybe he gets in on his third ballot, let's say, because again, we've had the issue the last 15 years of all the PED guys just
Right.
cluttering up the ballot, and voters can only vote for up to 10 guys. So it's really just a matter of, hey, I see these 10 guys as being more deserving than you. You're number 11 on my list. I think you're a Hall of Famer, but I can't get to you yet. I got to get to these 10 guys because you just got on the ballot. So I think it still would have taken that time for him to get in. So we've got metrics. We have numbers to evaluate and show and say, well, you're going to benefit in this way from playing at Coors Field. So you know what? Let's tamp those numbers down a little bit. Probably doesn't balance out the same for starting pitchers. I don't think that's really necessarily been figured out. We know defensive metrics. We still have a long way to go with the public facing defensive metrics. I'm sure teams have got that figured out a lot better than we're able to see. But we've got those metrics to kind of say, all right, let's quiet down the noise, and including park factors, park adjustment, and for the era, we can still look and say Todd Helton is the 15th best Hall of Famer of all time. Not, but he played in Coors Field. Let's hold that against him. It's already been held against him in wins above replacement. It's already been held against him and all these park adjusted statistics. So once you weed all of that out, he's still the 15th best Hall of Famer according to Jay Jaffe's system, JAWS.
And I mean, it's a mind bog because it's another example of we watch this guy. People don't watch the Rockies, and it's so frustrating. And it's a blessing and a curse because you love this team and it kind of flies a little under the radar, but then you watch a national broadcast and you want to pull your hair out because it's like, I know you guys are pros, but you just the way this team is percepted, and honestly, more often than not, rightfully so, because this team hasn't done itself any favors in the mainstream eye. But it is frustrating, and I just hate that Rocky's greatness gets negated by something as simple as just yelling Coors. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure a player that played in a hitter-friendly ballpark in Arizona just won the MVP, and his teammate who played in Colorado for a long, long time was the runner-up and would have won the MVP if that guy wasn't on his team. I mean, it's and DJ, and I am still very confident in Trevor's story as well. But enough about reminiscing the past. Patrick, let's close out here on just kind of I just kind of want to put a bow on the Rockies and all the storylines for the fans. When you are telling people what to tune in, what to expect, what to look for the Colorado Rockies in 2023, this spring training and in this season, what are you kind of setting the table for? What do you think should be the things Rockies fans are looking at and focusing on, and what their expectations should be?
I think spring training is going to be exciting for numerous reasons. In fact, today it was just announced that they've got 2 games in Las Vegas on March 18th and 19th against the Royals. So that makes things fairly interesting. But at spring training, it's going to be interesting, and it'll set the tone, I think, for the entire season, because you're going to get your first real glimpse at Zach Veen. I think we can all remember Ezekiel Tovar, being invited to big league camp last year, right after the pandemic, or excuse me, right after the lockout, and we started late, and then Tovar was, hitting the cover off the ball. It was very exciting, very interesting. Couldn't wait for him to get up. And I think Zach Veen has that same opportunity to be a major storyline, or at least, to get fans paying attention and primed for, his arrival at Coors Field. And then the rest of the season, it's going to be this year, and I think, next year as well. Again, don't know what they're going to be doing in next offseason, but I think they're going to be transition years as they really wait for that next group of prospects like Zach Veen, who even if he debuts this year, which I think he will, when does he really establish himself as an everyday regular, right? That might not be until 24, maybe even 25. Drew Romo making his debut. Guys like that are further down, Adiel Amador, Yanquiel Fernandez, Benny Montgomery, all those guys, and a couple of pitching prospects, including Gabriel Hughes, who should move quickly through the farm system. It's really going to be that transition year. And so watching in spring training for those young guys, knowing who are some of those names, and keeping an eye on the core four, as you mentioned, watching Sean Bouchard and saying, okay, hey, this guy who was really, an afterthought, could have been drafted last year in the Rule 5 draft. Like, he wasn't protected on the 40-man. He had to go out there and show it. In Albuquerque. In fact, I can remember, being somewhat of a fan of Sean Bouchard back in 2018 when he was with the Asheville Tourists, and he was, third on the depth chart. Actually, he was probably fourth on the depth chart, in my opinion. You had Chad Spanberger, if you remember him, who was eventually included in the Sungwon Oh trade. You had Brett Boswell, who was looking fantastic at second base. And then I like Casey Golden a lot to really throw back to a name. He's had some injuries. He's still in the system. But then there was Sean Bouchard. And he's the one. He's the guy that's actually made the jump to the big league. So watching him, watching Tolia, seeing what his defense looks like out in right field, even though he is the first baseman of the future. Your guy Elihuris Montero, like those are all important stories and things to watch for. Do they make the opening day roster? Do they start in AAA? Is Nolan Jones on the big league roster and Tolia's down in AAA? Like, those are some of the stories to be watching for in spring training and really getting a feel for what this roster is going to be in the future throughout this season. Who are the young guys you want to put your money on? Jonathan Daza, hey, is he a guy that you really, maybe want to extend at some point? Do you want to extend Brendan Rodgers, right? And if so, for how long? Because he only has 3 more years before he's a free agent. So there'll be a lot of interesting stories still within this, season of transition that I hope, and I feel fairly confident because last year it was relatively boring. I think this year will be a little bit more exciting than that.
And I think that's because a certain left fielder, Chris Bryant's going to play more. I think
Yep.
that's going to be good for the Rockies. The Rockies will score more because of that, but it's not going to be a groundbreaking thing. We're running a little long, but I do want to get this one, Patrick, too, since we're talking storylines. Should people be enjoying every moment of Charlie Blackmon that they have and see this year?
13th season, possibly his finest. This is possibly his final. Like this is his last year on record. I tend to think that he had a little extension. Like they could give him a 2-year deal, so he's back in 2024. But until that happens, you're right, Paul. You've got to cherish this. 13 years, over a decade. I mean, think about that. There are children going to games who saw Charlie Blackmon play before they could even remember it. Now they're in high school, watching
Right.
him as this legendary guy, the second longest tenured Colorado Rocky, a player who, I feel should have his number 19 retired.
If anyone else wears 19, that's a big problem. That one should be right on up there. No doubt about it. I mean, when you were looking for the next Todd Helton, and then you got the next Mr. Rocky, you got your big bearded, fishing loving, goofball right fielder who mashes the heck out of the baseball. I mean, it's something we don't want to talk about, but I think it is something that Rockies fans need to keep in the back of their mind this season to make sure you enjoy a specific all-time favorite of that. But Patrick, that's going to do it so much for today. More than enough time, and more than appreciative of your time here joining us and your expertise. Where can people go to stay up to date with you and DNVR?
Yeah, the DNVR.com is where you can go to sign up to become a diehard. Still a ton of really free content, but especially if you're in the Denver area, it's great. You get 15% off at our bar on the corner of Colfax and York. So just in and of itself, like that's a great bargain. But if you're not in the area, you can still be a part of our diehards only Discord. So we have some wonderful conversations about things other than sports. I mean, pro wrestling, hiking, tennis, lacrosse, F1. You name it. So the DNVR.com is the home to all of that. And on Twitter at DNVR_Rockies, at Patrick D. Lyons is where I'm at on Twitter.
You can find us at Locked On Rockies, LO Rockies on Twitter. I'm at Paul Holden 33. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into Locked On Rockies. Go support DNVR and Patrick. And again, thanks so much. And until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.